Can I bring the committee to order, please? Thank you. A warm welcome to those attending and to our viewers watching live on the Council YouTube channel Hillingdon, London. My name is Councillor Henry Higgins and I'm the chairman of this meeting. Details of business to be considered today are shown on the agenda, copies of which are available online under the live broadcast. We are expecting no fire alarm, so if the fire alarm does go off, please follow an officer and they will take you out to the building. If you have any mobile devices and tablets, can you make sure they're switched off or silent? Obviously, councillors will have our own computers to review the agendas and officers as well. I'm going to do some introductions. We have Councillor Bennett, Councillor Darren Davis, Councillor Philip Cawthorne, Councillor Jazz Dott, Councillor Elizabeth Gallick and Councillor Tony Gill. All welcome. My officers, and we have a lot of officers, must be for that big agenda that we've got, I can't remember what that application is for, is the Interim Director of Planning, Regeneration, Public Realm, Julia Johnson, welcome. Principal Planning Officer, Strategic Major Application Manager, Mandip Mathura, Principal Planning Officer, Ed Loughton, Principal Planning Officer, Andrew Thorley, Transport and Planning Development Team Manager Alan Tilley, and we have Ian Time, Planning and Specialist Team Manager, which we don't usually see, only on HS2, so I'm very honoured for you to be here too. Thank you. And also, the most important person beside me is Steve Clark. He's my Democratic Service Officer, and I'm welcoming another new Democratic Service Officer, Ryan Dell. Welcome. And it's also very nice to see probably the youngest member that's ever come to this committee reading a very interesting book. Yeah, no. You're most welcome. I hope we won't put you off for life, but we'll get through this now. So next thing is I will go now to the agenda for apologies of absence.
This evening we've received apologies for absence from Councillor Tuckwell with Councillor Philip Cawthorne substituting. Okay,
declaration of interest and matters becoming before this meeting. Any councillors got that? No? Fine, thank you. To receive and approve the minutes of the previous meetings, is that agreed? Yeah. And matters I notified in advance are urgent, there are none, and to confirm that all public and private reports are all in public. So we'll move to the main agenda. Can Ed, you want to take us away?
Thank you, Chair. Item 6 on the agenda is a hybrid planning application for the redevelopment of Hillingdon Hospital. Full planning consent is sought for Phase 1 for the demolition of existing buildings in the western part of the site and redevelopment to provide a new hospital plus multi-storey car park with mobility hub, public open space and surface car park expansion space. Outline planning consent is also being applied for Phase 2 for up to 327 residential units and 800 square metres of supporting commercial use. The phased approach is considered to be acceptable as there is a requirement to provide continuous healthcare on the site and therefore to build a new hospital while maintaining the majority of the current buildings. The existing hospital site has been developed in an ad hoc basis since the 1940s, and 81% of the buildings are classed as either poor or in a bad state, and the continual upkeep of the buildings is a huge ongoing cost that is impacting on the quality of care provided. If I can take members through the plans, this is the location plan. I'm sure everyone will know the location of Hillingdon Hospital. The site constraints plan. This is the FIRS building, the Grade 2 listed FIRS building. And then going through the photos of the site, you can see the quality of the buildings on site at the moment. This is the culvert that runs through the site. This is the Grade 2 listed FIRS building. There is an existing consent for the refurbishment of this building. This is one of the existing generators on the site. This is one of the temporary buildings that's come forward as part of the ad hoc development of the hospital. This is a further temporary building in the background. This building is the location of the proposed new creche, so the existing Busy Bees nursery on the site will be demolished, and this is the location of the new nursery, and that already has planning consent granted yesterday. And this is the existing Busy Bees nursery. So this is the site location plan, and it shows the existing buildings on the site. You'll notice there's a significant lack of landscaping available at the moment. This is the proposed phasing plan, with green being phase 1A, the yellow being phase 1B, and the orange being phase 1C. So as you can see, the development will come forward as the existing hospital building, as the new hospital is built, and the existing hospital can be demolished. So the red phase is the final phase, which is the reserved matters for the residential units. This is a helpful plan because it shows where the proposed new hospital will be, with a multi-storey car park here. The service yard would be to the south. This area here is landscape, but also functions as part of the drainage strategy, so it's a wetlands proposed. This plan helps to show that the constraints of the site, because you do have the TPO'd area here, these buildings are all required to maintain the functioning hospital whilst the new hospital is built. So the hospital would comprise of 79,604 square metres over 8 stories plus a basement. This would be an increase of 22,065 square metres on the existing buildings, and a significant increase to the level of care provided is proposed. This includes an improved environment for patients and staff, compliance with safety standards, better connectivity between departments, greater adoption of digital technologies, ability to adapt to future pandemics, and to support the integration of care and well-being. So the servicing yard, as I mentioned, is located here. There's also some backup generators proposed, which will be in this part of the site, and it's recommended that those are conditioned so that testing can only be for 14 hours per year. So ambulances would enter the site from Column Green Road. It's proposed the ambulance yard will have electric vehicle charging capacity in all proposed parking spaces, and it's recommended that Condition 28 be updated to secure this provision. The multi-storey car park, which is the building to the north, would provide 781 car parking spaces and 392 cycle parking spaces. Within the MSCP, it is proposed to include a mobility hub. This area would include tickets and information for buses, cycle repair, and 4 car club spaces. The car park itself would provide 46 disabled spaces and 147 spaces with active electric charging provision, 77 spaces with passive electric vehicle charging provision. This equates to 22% of hospital staff parking and 12% of patient parking. Once phase 1 has been completed, it is proposed to bring buses through the site. The benefit of this approach is to enable drop-off close to the hospital entrance and to improve traffic flow on Peel Heath Road. So buses would flow through the site here, and bus stops are proposed in this location adjacent to the hospital entrance, and also bus improvements proposed on Peel Heath Road here, so they can pull in. That should help flow the traffic flow on Peel Heath Road. So also within phase 1 are 2 areas of public open space. One is proposed to be an open area within the centre of the site, and the second has been named the Woodlands. These 2 areas will provide 8,104 square metres of public open space. So 2 areas of public open space. This is the central public open space, and then down here is the Woodlands area that also is involved in the drainage capacity for the proposals. The final element of phase 1 is a surface car park that is proposed to provide 161 spaces. This area is intended to be dual purpose, as it could also provide up to 14,000 square metres of expansion space if ever required by the hospital. So I go through the hospital plans. This is the ground floor plan. The red area is the accident emergency. Moving up through the plans and through the levels, you can see the different departments, which are different colours. As you go to the upper levels, you can see how the massing of the building is reduced to try and limit the visual impact. So here's the east elevation, the north elevation. Here's the elevation shown in with the surrounding buildings, south elevation and west elevation. This is the ground floor of the multi-storey car park with a mobility hub located in this area here. And on the level 1, the multi-storey car park, a link is proposed into the hospital building. And these are the elevations of the multi-storey car park. So phase 2 of the proposals is for a residential-led development of up to 327 units. The units would be in 3 blocks ranging in height from 3 to 8 stories. The affordable housing provision will be 50%, which is policy compliant. An addendum item is proposed to correct this in the heads of terms. The proposed housing mix would include a minimum of 20% three-bed family housing, which is proposed to be secured by condition. The parking ratio is proposed to be set at a maximum of 0.75 spaces per unit. Phase 2 proposes 4,590 square metres of public open space. So if I can go through the Phase 2 proposals, these are the plot deviations. So the footprint of the buildings, this would be the minimum and the maximum. These distances here you can't see on the plans, unfortunately, but they set the minimum privacy distances to ensure that they've been met. These are proposed building heights, and as you can see, the main height is located centrally away from residential properties and the Firs building. This is the proposed public open space, which will be secured by condition, which is these areas here. Proposed access and circulation, land uses. So the commercial uses that I mentioned before would be located here so as to enliven this space in the middle. Here's a bird's eye view of the site and some CGIs that have been produced. So this is a view across the public open space in the centre of the site towards the hospital. This is the mobility hub and the multi-storey car park, and this is the bridge between the multi-storey car park and the hospital. So due to the scale of the new hospital building, it is recognised that proposals may have a detrimental impact on the outlook of adjacent occupiers, and therefore represents a minor conflict with policy DMHB11 of the Hillingdon Local Plan Part 2. And if I can just go through these plans, these images that highlights the visual impact of the development. So this is Royal Lane looking north, this is as existing, and then this is as proposed with the new hospital. This is Royal Lane looking south as existing, and then again as proposed. This is Peeled Heath Road looking east. You can see the existing central tower block, and then the proposed multi-storey car park with a residential element highlighted behind. Apple Tree Avenue looking north as existing and proposed, and Bryony Close looking north as existing and proposed. In terms of the energy of the proposals, for the new hospital, it's proposed to achieve a 31% carbon reduction, which is below the 35% required. Therefore, a large carbon offset contribution of 4.5 million is included within the heads of terms. It's proposed that the Trust are given the opportunity at detailed design stage to improve the carbon offset further, and it is also proposed the Trust are given the opportunity to use the carbon offset contribution to make efficiencies within their own buildings rather than by the Council. There's an addendum item that would ensure that those efficiencies are made within the borough rather than within the surrounding boroughs. In terms of other addendum items, there is a change to ensure that any an additional informative is recommended regarding use of electricity from the backup generators. In terms of comments received, we've received 24 comments, with 10 in support, 8 in objection, and 6 comments that are deemed to be neutral, as they talk about the positives and the negatives of the proposals. No petition has been received. In conclusion, the principle of a new hospital building and additional residential units is widely supported. The proposals represent a minor conflict with policy DMHB11. However, the detrimental impact is considered acceptable when the broader benefits of the development in terms of healthcare provision are taken into consideration. Therefore, subject to a Section 106 legal agreement and relevant planning conditions, it is recommended that the application be approved. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. That's well done. Yeah, that's precise and to the point. I think everybody got the gist of that. We don't have any petitions on this, but we do have the right in the council for councillors to have their say. As Councillor Chandel has pulled himself away from his wedding anniversary, I've allowed him to go first in front of Councillor Gohill. I do apologise.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Committee. Finally, it's upon us to have a new Hillingdon Hospital. This one is well beyond its best before date. My children have been born here. Actually, my wife was born in Hillingdon Hospital as well. So it's been a while. I think it's a wonderful development. You mentioned that point, officers mentioned impact on neighbours. It is not minor, it's quite huge actually. Looking at your front garden and seeing the sky and then having to look up a bit higher, it is a lot more than what is suggested. In terms of, as a local councillor, what I'm looking at is the issues that we have currently. We have currently issues with parking. getting into the hospital is quite a challenge. It causes a lot of backup. Residents can't get up and down the road in PDs especially. We've got to make sure that the parking fits in perfectly. I understand we've got 781 in the multi-storey and 161 in the surface. We've also got 40 spaces on the perimeter. Not quite sure how that fits in on the plans. And also, the 161, potentially we could lose that if the hospital requires further buildings. So I would like to know what impact that has overall on the overall picture. Included into that is also the 327 residential units that are being proposed. How is the parking going to fit in well with that? I'm going to rush through it. The bus route, I think, is welcomed. Long overdue. Something that's going to stop right in front of the thing, especially with the current London Mayor's ULIS and all the other taxes that he wants to put onto us. It's going to be essential that we start using public transport a bit more, especially to developments such as the hospital. Surface water drainage, not the most interesting of subjects, but we have a big issue at the moment. We need that sorted out. We can't have great floods like we currently have in Peed Heath. I was happy with the noise level fixed, 5 decibel below the background, but could we just make sure the background is correct figure, not background sort of fanfare or something like that, so it shoots up. Site clearance and the fences that you're going to put up. Could we have some sort of mechanism where residents can talk to somebody should there be an issue? I know it's going to be a wonderful hospital at the end of it, but we want happy neighbours and a happy hospital. And that's my lot. Thank you.
Yeah, what I'll do, thank you, Councillor Chandler. You may go, but we'll answer those questions at the end when I've taken everybody. Councillor Gohill, would you like to go? So you can answer those after.
Right, thank you, Chairman. Thank you, councillors and officers, for providing such a detailed report, all 200 pages of it that I genuinely enjoyed reading. So thank you very much for that. Again, as Roy said, I'm so happy that we're finally redeveloping Hillingdon Hospital and it's finally come in front of the committee. Many in Uxbridge consider it to be the jewel and the heart of the area, and I'd actually expand that to all of Hillingdon. So I'm pleased it's finally being regenerated. Having read the report, I had some concerns about, as Councillor Chamdal mentioned, surface water in the outside the hospital, especially on Peelheath Road, and noise and impact. But having read the officer's report and the restrictions that are put in place on construction and on noise levels, I'm quite happy that most people who live nearby the hospital, as I do, would be satisfied with that, especially given that at the end of it they will have a brand spanking new hospital. One thing I noticed in officers' reports, and it was actually under the GLA precept, but I'd like to touch on it just quite quickly anyway, is the bus routes that are running through the hospital. There was a note, I think it was on page 73, where they said it's assumed the buses would be hydrogen powered or electric. Is it possible to, because clearly building a new hospital is going to have some sort of emission impact, and the plans do a great job of offsetting that impact within the hospital going ahead, but I don't want that to be added by buses or public transports running through. I don't know whether it's in the power of the committee, but if that's something that could be explored, I'd appreciate it. And finally, I'd just like to add that I'm really pleased to see the amendments, the addendum sheet, which shows that there's nearly £4.5 million worth of carbon offset funds staying hopefully within Hillingdon. So I want to thank the committee for raising that, as that would have been one of the points I raised. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gohill. We now have a statement from our local MP, Boris Johnson. Would you like to read that out, Steve, for us?
Of course. So we have a statement here from the Member of Parliament for Uxbridge and South Ruislip. Councillors, as I know you all recognise, Hillingdon Hospital is no longer fit for purpose. Much of the infrastructure is outdated and in urgent need of modernisation. It is vital, therefore, that Hillingdon Hospital is granted planning permission to redevelop its ageing site and tackle a significant critical backlog. As you know, the proposed scheme will result in the current hospital being replaced by a new state-of-the-art hospital with facilities that are at the cutting edge of modern technology, innovation, sustainability, and that drive excellence in patient care. The plans are well progressed, with an outline business case already approved by the Trust Board. There is full support from all local stakeholders, including the North West London Integrated Care Board, the North West London Acute Collaborative, and NHS London. Moreover, a recent deep dive into the project by the New Hospitals Programme team confirmed good alignment between the scheme's preferred way forward and the New Hospital Programme's minimum viable product. National priorities have been embedded into the design from the outset. These include modern methods of constructions which adopt standard, repeatable and interoperable designs, enabling off-site manufacture and efficient processes to deliver better outcomes and manage costs. It is also welcome that the proposed layout of the new hospital will provide significantly more floor space in comparison to the current site. I'm pleased that the design reflects net zero carbon requirements, delivers a digitally enabled hospital, and that there has been a strong focus on containing capital costs, which in real terms, when adjusted for inflation, have reduced between strategic outline case and outline business case. Finally, as I'm sure you will all appreciate, there is a real urgency to progress this development. 80% of the present site requires replacement soon or is inoperable. Clearly, this has a detrimental impact on patient safety and experience, staff recruitment, and the financial position of the Trust. Taking all of this into consideration, I hope you will agree with me that there is an urgent need for confirmation that the new scheme can progress to the next stage at pace with full planning consent, and we can finally deliver the new hospital that staff and patients deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, before I open it to the floor, members, I just want to mandate to some of those things were asked by the councillors, so and there's a few little minor changes that we noticed while we were sitting here. Okay.
Thank you, Chairman. Before we start, Ed did a great job of highlighting what was in the addendum, so if you have any questions about the addendum, don't hesitate to come back to me. I just wanted to clarify a few of the additional verbal updates that we're making this evening that are not in the addendum that's printed. So, head of term number 13, and that's the affordable housing head of term. It has been, unfortunately, there was an error in drafting. The 70% of affordable housing is for social rent, the 30% is for shared ownership, so it's actually drafted the wrong way round. So we are verbally correcting that so that it's captured in the amended heads of terms and the legal agreement. We are proposing to add an informative, specifically with regard to head of term number 13, to try and seek best endeavours to accommodate key workers within the affordable housing delivery. Now, it's not something that we can mandate. However, the residential element will not come forward until circa 2030. We may be in a different position whereby we may have different affordable housing policies, and they will be judged by that, by those policies at the time for the reserve matters. So an informative would also remind us that these are the things that we were hoping to get out of the application if we could in 8 years' time. Condition 28, as Ed mentioned, is being amended so that all ambulance parking is provided with active vehicle charging points. Now, it is a commitment in the applicant's transport statement. If it's not a condition, we can't enforce against it. So it's easier to amend condition 28. The last of the verbal updates, and I apologise for this, there's a drafting error with the carbon offset tonne, so it's £95 per tonne, not 90. So that's probably repeated throughout the report, and I apologise for that error. So when the section 106 is drafted, we will capture the correct sum. I can briefly go through some of the queries that were raised by Councillor Chandal. I will pass over to Highways and Ed to talk about the exact parking numbers, because I don't want to get that wrong, and I probably will. There is a head of term number 2, which is page number 19. We, at the moment, do not have a plan before us about what the temporary arrangements are for staff parking and visitor parking. We're aware that there will be a proportion of parking left on the site. The hospital needed to progress the application in order to secure government funding, and we understand that. However, we are very aware that there is a need for another delivery of another site to provide visitor and staff parking. There will be a shortfall of circa 400, but I'm going to let Ed clarify those numbers. So we're looking at, we have had informal discussions about alternative sites locally to provide that temporary parking. So the head of term secures that they can't actually start the works until they have that plan in place. Surface water drainage, as both ward councillors mentioned, is controlled by conditions 26 and 27, so we're seeking betterment because we are aware that this causes significant flooding elsewhere in the site. There is a culvert that runs through the site, so we have Ian, who is with us today, has worked incredibly hard to try and get the best strategy we could for the site, and it covers across both the residential phase and the hospital. Now, can the residents speak to someone, was a question. Now, there is a construction environmental management plan. One of the things we look to find within a construction environmental management plan is that the hospital and also the residential developer will provide contact details for someone they can go to with grievances and complaints. It's quite standard practice with all construction management plans, so there will definitely be someone the residents can go to. Buses was the last question. Could they all be electric? Now, I have just looked online, and there is a strategy that by 2034 all of TfL buses will be an electric fleet. We anticipate the road will be operational for buses about that time, so before the residential. So I think the timings will align, but not exactly. So we may have a mixture of electric, but by 2034 we will all be electric. I don't feel it's appropriate for us to mandate that the bus routes are electric. It would just be difficult for TfL to manage. It's hard enough for them to manage as it is. So that's my feedback, but that's my feedback. And yes, any other questions, feel free. But shall we pass over to Ed on?
So we pass over to Ed, and then to Alan, and then Ian on the last bit about the water, if that's okay with you. And also, can someone mention about the consultation that has already happened so far, and how many people have responded? Yeah.
Okay, so in terms of the wider parking, during construction there'll be 322 spaces still on the site. The Trust are going to move some services over to Mount Vernon, and there'll be a further 127 car parking spaces available at Mount Vernon during construction. And Mandip is correct, it's 400 spaces that is necessary for staff car parking. In terms of the residential parking, it's separate to the hospital parking, and that is set at a maximum of 0.75 spaces per unit.
Thank you, Chairman. The hospital currently provides 997 car parking spaces on site and leases a further 175, giving a total of 1,175 spaces. The new hospital will provide 781 car parking spaces in the multi-storey car park and 161 car parking spaces in the surface car park. That gives a total of 942. So there would be a shortfall, a reduction in the number of car parking spaces of 233. Travel needs would be satisfied by the mobility hub offering personalised journey planning, the new bus service that will provide access into the site, Santander bicycle hire facilities, and an abundance of cycle parking. So the Highway Authority feels confident that the car parking numbers for the hospital will cope with future demands. There would also be a car parking management strategy which has got an undertaking to reduce and appoint how car parking spaces are used. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Alan. Ian, you want to?
Yeah, I'll just be briefly on the surface water drainage stuff. We know that there's a problem in the area, as the councillors mentioned. The culvert is a significant problem on the watercourse running to the south of the site. As you can see from the landscaping plan in front of you, the area of hard standing is heavily reduced, so that immediately provides betterment. There is a significant increase in attenuation on site as well, because obviously policies for new development are far outweigh what is required for older stuff. So with attenuation on site, we're getting towards the 1 in 100 year plus 40% for climate change, all stored on the site, which means that that's a copious amount of extra water that will not leave the site through that not overly well-sized culvert, unfortunately. But we couldn't open up the culvert, but we have come up with a good solution with the applicants, which will reduce the flood risk in the area. So,
thank you,
Chair.
Ian. Thank you. And
And finally, we just wanted to run through the public consultation. So the applicant team, prior to the formal planning application coming in, did run their own public consultation, and that was with circa 3,913 local residents. Now, the council, in order to make sure that we were covering those same residents, probably would not have consulted as many, but we did. We consulted and sent letters to 3,913 local residents. The proposal was advertised in the local press, and site notices were displayed around the site. Now, it's interesting to see that we only received 24 letters of consultation as a result of posting out nearly 4,000 letters. Now, of those 24, we did have 8 objections, but we did also have 10 letters of support, and then there were 6 letters which were neutral. They identified that the development was positive. They also had issue with some of the negatives of the development. So, yes, 24 letters of comment on an application of this scale is quite very low. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm going to open it to the floor. So who would like to take me away first? Councillor Bennett.
Thank you very much, Chairman. So my question was just around the kind of bus provision, so this potential new route, buses running through, kind of linking it to the 233 fewer car parking spaces, is just whether or not somehow we can influence TfL to, we've got the luxury of time before this is constructed. When the bus routes come up for retender, could we specify that double-decker buses are put on routes like the U3, the U1? Is there a way of increasing public transport capacity that perhaps doing things like that is a bit more cost effective than saying we want a new bus route, we want increased frequencies and more buses on the road? I just wonder if there's any scope for that. To build a larger hospital that I think it was a 20,000 square foot increase, to have a lot more patients and visitors going there, but then to lose parking spaces, I guess we've got to have confidence that TfL are going to support us and provide as best public transportation as possible.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Do you want to pick up that one, Brenda?
If we go back to the beginning, so the officer team a few years ago advocated that we would like to see what we would call an express service. So that is a service that runs from the main transport hubs, Oxbridge Station, Hayden Hardington Station and West Drayton, in order to shuttle patients to the hospital without all of those stops en route. Now, we have had COVID, we've had bus routes reduced, and we were not supported by TfL in providing additional bus services or providing some of those as express routes. So we have tried our best. Now, the application when it was lodged did not have buses coming into the site. They were still using the perimeters of Peel Heath, Colin Green and Royal Lane. So that was one of the things that TfL were willing to support us on, as well as the delivery of the mobility hub, to give everyone that real-time notice of when their bus was arriving, in order to get them out of their cars and onto public transport. So we have tried, but we haven't been supported. So it's not something I propose as a condition or a head of term. We do have heads of terms to make sure that the bus route internally within the site is fit for purpose, so TfL will definitely come into the site in the long term. I don't know whether Ed or Alan wanted to add to that. Yeah.
Alan?
Thank you very much, Chairman. Quite simply, where there's passenger demand, the bus operators will respond. So I would envisage that there will be demands to travel to that hospital, and when they're in sufficient numbers, the bus operators will respond by providing, for example, double-decker buses. Something that I really like, and that's a 278 service that provides access to Crossrail, really strongly branded. I go to the Elizabeth line, and I would like to work with Transport for London to see how we can get bus stops and the buses branded, so people can see that bus goes to the brand new Hillingdon Hospital.
That's a fantastic idea, Alan.
Thank you, Chairman.
I would just like to ask officers, forgive me, as my role as Chairman, I'm allowed to do this, so forgive me. Obviously, we're in a different climate, obviously post-pandemic. Hopefully, things will start getting back. So, is it possible for us to have sort of like maybe an informative of something that we would have liked to happen in the future. I don't know whether that is possible. That what Councillor Bennett is saying, I think, is really quite a good quality idea, that we're very conscious as a committee that we would like to see these things happen. Obviously, we appreciate there is a financial cost and other things, but is there a way that we can, just as a noting or something, that we can, that it could be fed back to TfL?
It would be helpful if Alan were to draft a condition, or an informative rather, to express what we would like to achieve. As you said, we have 8 to 10 years to deliver this. We may well find that at stage 2, the TfL acknowledge that and maybe push the developer to do such. So yes, having the informative, and then Ed and I can have that discussion with the GLA officers at for stage 2. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Alan, you can put the other bits in that you were saying as well. Yeah, about bus branding and like that as well. Okay, Councillor Cawthorne.
Thank you, Chairman. I think this is a momentous occasion in our civic lives. Rarely, if ever, are we presented with a proposal of such overwhelming benefit that's so widely recognised, so to influence our view of where the planning balance sits, that one almost feels more sorry for anyone affected by any downsides, and inevitably there are downsides of any application. And I suppose principally the size of the building, which has been talked about, it will be a substantial size, there's no two ways about that. But I do recognise the work that's gone into mitigating that to the extent it's possible, and we've had that explained very comprehensively. I do want to ask a couple of questions, if I may. We've heard about parking and traffic. I suppose for me there are two issues. I suppose there's the construction side and what happens post that. I can tell you that there are plenty of staff working at the hospital that do not currently get a parking space even now that's allocated, so they are having to park on streets in the area. That's obviously causing an existing problem. So I think I heard Mandy say there isn't yet a plan, so I'm not sure whether that applies to the construction side of things or things moving forward, because I'm conscious of things like healthy streets, and there's this requirement for applications of this magnitude to take account of the need to get people as far as possible using sustainable affordable transport. So I'm just wondering where we are with that. Is that something to look at in the future, or how far is our planning developed around that? So I suppose that's one question. I want to ask also about the sustainable urban drainage system, because I think Ian spoke about this. It's worth perhaps repeating for the benefit of the watching public that, as I understand it, the sustainable urban drainage system allows for the retention of rainwater and for the sustainable release of it over a period of time in a way that doesn't overwhelm drains and the infrastructure that goes with it. Can I just make sure that I've understood that correctly? Is that what's there? Because I assume that the building that's there now wouldn't have any of that. So actually this is an improved proposition in terms of a flood risk in terms of local residents. And my final question, if I may, just around affordable housing. We've all been there, haven't we? We sign off an affordable housing figure, and of course developers over time can come back saying, oh, I'm not sure if that's viable for us, and what have you. Can we have some comfort around how this will be conditioned in a way that safeguards ourselves as an authority and the local community from any issues around that? So I think they are my three questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cawthorne. So we've got the first one about construction and the parking around that. The second one is about the drainage, and the third one is about the affordable housing. So the first one will be taken by Ed, is that right? Or myself?
So in terms of construction, there is a construction environmental management plan condition be in place that would control parking during the construction phase.
Okay. Who's going to take the drainage? That would be Ian.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. You're absolutely correct, Councillor Cawthorne, that the water will be going through to sustainable urban drainage systems. So the London plan sets a hierarchy of types of sustainable urban drainage systems that ultimately reduce the amount of water in the storm event that goes into the hard network, if you like, the pipe network. And on this site, there are above ground storage areas, particularly on the landscape area to the south of the site, which is the sort of like the woodland area. So that's a sort of wet woodland, so that's going to be a natural area where water will build up. There's also underground storage tanks, not high on the hierarchy, but ultimately it retains the water in the storm event. So there is a myriad of options on this site. There is a condition that requires further details, and we will push the applicant to deliver more solutions higher up the hierarchy as we go through the detailed design. But at this stage it is policy compliant, and it does attenuate the water to levels that we're satisfied with.
Okay, Mandip, you're going to finish off?
Thank you. If I go back to the parking point, so we do have an active travel zone contribution, and that is head of term number 25. So we secured £561,000 towards active travel zone and public realm improvements, and that was all manner of things. It doesn't include wayfinding, but there are lots of improvements to get links improved to main nodes such as West Drayton and the surrounding area. We do also have a head of term which is number 19, that all residents in the future development will not be eligible for a parking permit, and so that is quite key insofar as there are concerns about parking injudiciously in the local residential area. Affordable housing, very good question, has been secured under head of term number 13, so I assure you it's in there. We are securing 50% of affordable housing with 70% at social rent levels and then 30% at intermediate levels, which will hopefully include those key workers that we're trying to advocate through our proposed informative. The site will also be liable to an early stage viability review. So if the proposals aren't triggered or implemented in good time, now good time is normally 2 years, but because we know this will be beyond those 2 years, it will be a longer period to be agreed with the GLA. But yes, they will also then perhaps need to provide more than 50%.
Thank you. Is that Councillor Cawthorne?
Can I just say one further thing, if I may? Then I'll shut up for the rest of this debate.
You don't have to shut up. We love hearing you. Don't you? Just carry on.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for those responses. And I think with that, I would like to move the officer recommendations that are before us this evening. I think, going back to my cabinet days and when I chaired the Health and Wellbeing Board, I can well remember having grand tours of some of the not so grand areas of this hospital, which predate my birth there, which was in the mid-60s, and this goes back to the war, and some of it really is an appalling state. It really is crying out for redevelopment that enables the delivery of modern patterns of care, which the health and social care economy are crying out for, quite honestly. So I very much welcome the proposals as they come forward. I think we should thank the officers as well for their extensive involvement in this, going back many years. It started life in my time in cabinet as well, and also to recognise the consultation that took place as well. I mean, it was important that it did, but I suppose the small number of responses we've had back perhaps is a recognition of the fact that people do actually think there's a need for this. So move the recommendations, and I'll hold my peace now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Thornton. I've got Councillor Dott, Councillor Gill, and Councillor Davis. So, Councillor Dott.
Thank you, Chairman. On page 75, paragraph 4 and 5 of pedestrian environment, report is saying proposal is unacceptable from a pedestrian safety perspective. What consideration have been given to ensure the pedestrian safety? I have another question, but I'll come back. All right, okay. Another one is on page 22, column D. I would like to have some clarity on a legal point. If the committee approve this application tonight and applicant do not finalize the legal agreement or do not provide any contribution towards improvement, then what would be the council position? As the report says, the applicant has failed to provide contribution towards several services, improvements and services. That's the two questions. Thank you.
So, who's going to take the first one about pedestrians? Alan? Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chairman. The comments were provided by Transport for London, and they have been noted. As the Healthy Streets contribution starts to be spent, it will be spent in consultation with the Council's Principal Accessibility Officer, and he's got expert opinions and views and can offer expert professional advice on the provision of facilities for disabled people. So that's something that I'm sure he would have picked up. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
On the thank you, and on the legal stuff, I know we have a legal officer here, but Mandip can cover this one because it's in the report. Go
So, the reason for refusal that we've set out here is, so if the applicant team fail to sign the Section 106 agreement, we will then move to refuse the planning application because they haven't been able to secure those contributions and mitigation to make the development acceptable. So this is out, so we don't have to come back to committee again. You're approving the refusal reason in the event that the applicant fails to secure those final bits of the puzzle.
Councillor Gill.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the officers for bringing such a detailed report to the committee. Just wonderful seeing this project being approved and, potentially approved and debated, yeah. And so, I mean, following my trajectory, I average about 2 visits to A&E every year, so I've got a lifetime full of visits to the new site. Just a few questions from you. The first one, it was looking at the bus routes. So I'm assuming some of the buses will be coming out of Column Green Road, is it? And turning into Peel Heath. I think it's the U4 specifically, because it's a very sharp angle that I'm assuming is going to be happening. So that could become a potential gridlock for traffic. So that was the first question. The second one was to do with the electric side of it, electric charging. I know we're moving forward, the electric car market's growing, and I'm assuming by completion of this hospital, electric cars might be the majority on the cars. So is there enough infrastructure to meet the demand for those vehicles? And the final one from me, I promise, was to do with the narrowness of some of the roads around the area. Are they suitable for the building of the hospital? There'll be loads of HGVs coming in, aggregates, so there might be constraints from that side. And that's all from me, I promise.
Everybody's been very apologetic tonight. It's very quite nice. It's not usually like this, trust me. He was on to take the first one then, about Ed.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. So, as you can see, there is actually an area of land that's set aside in this corner of the site for improvements to that roundabout, should they be required, because that is known to be or has been seen to be a potential pinch point, as you quite rightly point out. In terms of the width of the roads through the site, there is a heads of term that requires the roads to be up to a standard that TfL will accept for buses to use, and part of that will be a swept path analysis to make sure the roads are wide enough.
Yeah. Amanda?
If we just take the last of your questions, so electric vehicle charging points, the infrastructure that we approve must be based on the policies that we have today. That's not to say that we couldn't try and secure betterment through reserve matters. So there is a commitment by the hospital to deliver electric vehicle charging within the multi-storey car park. There's also a commitment and a planning condition to require electric vehicle charging within the residential phases, but we will do our best if, as you say, we move towards more electric vehicles to secure more at reserve matter stage. I appreciate that the local roads are very narrow and there will be construction traffic, but the construction environmental management plan, which is one of the conditions, will secure the routing of those heavy goods vehicles to get to site and try and avoid taking any unnecessary residential properties. And the hours of routing are usually, or the hours of delivery are usually controlled as well to mitigate the impact on the local residents.
Councillor Gill, do you have any further? Okay.
Thank you.
I think we're at the Betamax and VHS thing about electric vehicles at the moment. Hydrogen, I think, is the way to go. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chairman. I have 3 questions, if that's okay. I think this is a great project. I think we need to get it right now, though, for our residents. The first question I have is the construction management plan. I can't see anything about wheel washing or anything like that. Can we ask for that to be added, because I think that would be a massive impact on them small roads within the area. I did have a look, I might have missed it. My second question is on the TPOs on site. I'm assuming from the report it says there's going to be boreholes. I don't think it'd be anything on the standard of HS2, but are we looking at protecting them trees? Part of that. And the third question is on Royal Lane. There is a school for special needs. I'm assuming the noise off of this site could pose some problems to the children present. Are we able to, or have we liaised with anyone at that school? And also the collection times, I believe they use transport buses. Are we have we mitigated any problems or pre-planned for any problems from that? Thank you.
Thank you. Who's going to take, obviously, we'll go with trees. Who wants to take the trees first?
I say that, Chair, while Ed was looking at me to take that question. The TPO section is on the woodland area that is retained to the south of the site, so that's where we've also established some of the surface water attenuation areas. So that is an area that we would is open space, sort of convalescent space, which is obviously lacking. You know, a lot of it is lacking at the minute in the existing hospital. So those TPOs are going to be protected and enhanced through further landscaping as well.
Thank you. And the next one, Amanda? No,
So
Ed, sorry. Ed.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the construction environmental management plan, wheel washing isn't included, but we can certainly add that.
Thank you. And the special needs school, Amanda?
I am just checking if we consulted Meadow. We consulted 3,000 people, so I'm hoping we did. We can add an informative to ask that liaison with the school start is taken into account. Because there are 3,000 local residents, struggling to find Meadow in amongst them. Sorry, did you want to?
So in terms of noise, there's obviously two issues with noise. Construction noise that we manage through Section 61 of the Control of Noise Pollution Act, so outside the planning process. So we would expect the applicant to come to us to set some thresholds that would put in place some engagement and active notification of noise, and obviously a complaints process as well. So that's all dealt with outside the planning process. Then there's the operational noise, which we talked about before, which is probably better managed than it is at the minute as well. So obviously the school is experiencing the operational noise from the hospital as at the minute, but that's something that we can take away with Meadow School in particular.
Fine, Mandy, you want to come about the wheel washers? I think you spotted a good one there after all that report.
Yes, we will add the wheel washing, and we can confirm that Meadow School were consulted on the application, but we will add the informative to ask that the hospital liaise with the school.
Okay. Is there anything further?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, officers. On that, I'm happy to second this.
Oh, great. Thank you. I've been proposed and seconded. It's very, very unusual. Okay, Councillor Dott, you wish to come back. Oh, you wanted to do the second. All right, everybody. Councillor Bennett, would you like to?
Thank you, Chairman. I thought you might think I was obsessed with buses if I spoke about them again, but Councillor Gill jumped in. Just to say thank you for the informative. I think if we can get kind of more double-decker buses, higher frequencies, electric vehicles, as Councillor Gohill said, I think that would be really good. There was two questions I had. One was just to clarify, when TfL say the bus route is going to run through, is that all 6 bus routes that currently serve the hospital, or is it a selection of 1 or 2? And the second one was just around parking during the construction phase. So when phase 1 is kind of being built, which is the new hospital and the new multi-storey car park, as the existing hospital operates, presumably some of the surface car parking spaces currently in use will be lost. Has there been any discussion with the trust around sort of provision for, any sort of off-site parking, shuttle bus services, that type of thing?
Bandit?
No, I'm happy to take that there is discussion about alternative sites to provide temporary parking, but there is no certainty of which site will be the final selected. So head of term number 2, so page number 19, does ask for the temporary visitor and staff parking scheme to be approved prior to demolition, so that there is always adequate parking in place. There are circa 400 spaces that the hospital will need to find before they start construction works on a site nearby. There are also existing shuttle services between Hillingdon Hospital and Mount Vernon, which will also continue to operate for staff and visitors and patients. And I have forgotten the first question that you asked, and I'm so sorry. I forgot to write it.
Was the buses, he said, and...
So no, it was. Will it be all 6 bus routes?
I will hand over to Ed or Alan about how.
Do you want to take that one?
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. The buses that would run through the hospital campus is yet to be determined. You have to take into account that because the bus is going through the hospital, the bus is not going as close to another property where it might be diverting from, and then Transport for London have to think about things. The bus route becomes longer, therefore they have to put another extra bus into the system to maintain frequency. So there's a lot of operational considerations and juggling to be done between the services, but the ultimate aim is to provide bus access to the hospital that's as best it can be achieved. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Alan. All right. So, I'm proposing seconded. No other questions? No? Oh, Councillor Gellert, you would like to say something? Okay.
Sorry. Thank you, Chair. If I'm reading correctly, there is parking management plan hasn't been secured yet. There's no information concerning that. And also, there's no information about parking charges, how they will be reviewed. Is there a chance of putting a notice or condition that the charges for staff using those spaces can be at the reduced rate?
Councillor, I mean, I've had this conversation. Obviously, as a chairman, I have a pre-meeting, and I raised the same point. Officers are going to put it in the management plan for the parking, and will try their best to encourage the trust to do that. But that's about the best we do. The first bit of your question, Amanda, do you want to take?
So the car parking management plan will be subject to review. So the way it will work is that, without wanting to dictate how many spaces are given to visitors and staff, it will be a moving feast, but it will be managed by virtue of the car parking management plan. So we don't want to leave spaces empty when there is potentially demand for additional staff needing to use the car park. So it will be a moving feast to be controlled through the plan and through the liaison with the trust.
Is that okay? Right. So, I've been proposed and seconded. I'm going to get Mandip, because if you try and read my writing, I'm going to have a struggle here. But Mandip was very good. She's written all the informative down, so we're going to go through those. If anybody thinks we've forgotten something, please put your hand up. Mandip, after you.
So in addition to all of the items on the addendum, we are making an amendment to head of term number 13. So that's a correction to the drafting error. It should be 70% social rent and 30% shared ownership. We are adding an informative to encourage the affordable housing to be provided to key workers. Condition 28 is amended to allow all ambulance parking to be served by active fast vehicle charging points. The heads of term relating to energy will be amended to £95 per tonne. We are including an informative to seek improvements to the bus capacity, routing, frequency, and I will finalise that drafting with Alan. Condition number 14 needs to be amended, updated to add wheel washing as a criterion, and we're adding an informative that the construction environmental management plan should be consulted on pre-submission to the council with Meadow School.
Thank you. I think that's everything. No one's thing. The only thing for me, I would like to say, I don't know if you could really give is on the 31%. I really do. You know, I'm not going to ask for anything, but I really do think they could do better than 31% on carbon offset. I know it might be less money for us, but I'd rather see that more energy sufficient building that supports itself rather than us get loads of money. So I've been proposed and seconded, all the informatives. So can I show of hands for those in agreement with the officers' recommendations with the additional affirmatives? So that is passed, and I don't know whether we should have a round of applause, but there you go. So I think it's a massive thing for this borough, and I'm so pleased. Anyway, so for those who wish to leave, can you leave quietly? And please don't congregate and have a party outside. We need to carry on with the agenda. Right, so we're going to go to item 7. Yeah. And Andrew, you're going to do this one for us.
Thank you, Chair. So this proposal relates to the demolition of an existing school building and the erection of a replacement, slightly larger building to allow its continued use as a school for children with special educational needs. Here we can see the site shown in red. The wider site actually includes two schools. So there's Coatford Junior School to the south and Grangewood School to the north. Here we can see the constraints plan. There are numerous protective designations around the site, including most significantly the scheduled ancient monument, which is that brown line that sort of skims across the top. It also sort of edges into the site at the far right-hand side of the site. It's not shown on this plan, but it does go all the way down. Okay. There's also a site of special scientific interest covering around the edge of the site and also includes that corner in the right, which is basically a site protected for its nature value. Here we can see the site's location, the edge of a built-up area to the right and next to the green belt to the left, which is where the site of special scientific interest is. As you can see, it's characterised by woodland mostly. We can take through some photos. So these are the photos from the front of the site on 4th Street, looking at the access. I mean, there you can see the houses, which are fairly typical of houses in the area. Sorry, there's a slight delay on these photos because of their size, I think. Anyway, so that's the front of the school. There are some trees around the site. Sorry, I don't know what's going on with this photos. Yeah, it's just a long delay. Sorry, so there's the front of the school, and you can see the central reservation, which is shown on the plans a bit later on. And there's the main school building, which is single-storey with a bit of a steep roof, and you can sort of see the playground in the background and the woodlands forming the general background to all the site. Here's the proposed block plan. As you can see, the school building is basically replacing the building that's there at the moment. It's slightly larger, extends further east and west, as you can see there, but it's broadly in the same location. In terms of the ground floor plan, it's arranged sort of with sort of classrooms all around the edges and interlocking, and then there's courtyards in the middle, which is shown where the lack of building there, and those can all be accessed directly from the classrooms. There's quite a significant uplift in floor space from around 2,000 square metres to nearly 5,000 square metres. The number of teaching spaces goes from 11 to 39, which again is quite a significant increase, and the number of students this can cater for goes from 100 to 180, so again, a significant increase. Here you can see the proposed first floor plan. The current building doesn't have any first floor teaching space, so that's a big bonus. You've also got it's quite faint on this outline actually. I think you might be able to make out here in the next one. You've got sort of terraces for sensory play as well as courtyards and sort of moogers around the edge. Here you can see the roof plan, mostly just for PV, and we'll also secure a sort of a biosolar roof, which is shown on the biodiversity net gain plan. In terms of the car park layout, parking increases as a result of the proposal, obviously to cater for more staff and more students. There are 110 car parking spaces proposed, including 38 for use by Coatford Junior School, which comprises of 107 standard bays and 3 wheelchair accessible bays, which is an increase of 38 spaces as well. The number of minibus spaces remains unchanged. However, the layout allows for, sort of, you can see there on the yellow mark there, the 7 minibuses to wait for their turn on site. In terms of site access, it operates in a one-way fashion, operating anti-clockwise, sort of going around the site there, and there's also sort of bits where the minibuses can turn off and wait within the site, so it doesn't cause a build-up on the street. Regrettably, there is quite a significant level of tree removal across the site, which is needed to facilitate development. We're looking at the loss of 70 individual trees and 5 tree groups. The tree survey was done, and none of them were Category A trees, which are to be removed. And any trees which are to be lost are going to be replaced on a one-to-one basis. Here you can see the tree protection plan. This has been reviewed by our tree officer, who has agreed that the level of removal is necessary to carry out the development, but subject to the tree replacement and tree protection plan, it should all be fine. Here we can see the existing elevations. As you can see, in the photos, it's a single-storey building with a pretty sharp pitched roof. Here are the proposed elevations. The proposed scale is marginally bigger. It's part 1, part 2 storey. Maximum height of 9.2 metres, which is an increase of 2.4 metres, so again, relatively minor. And it tapers down to 1 storey where it joins Coatford Junior School to the south of the site, which works pretty well. Here you can see the proposed sections, which is just really to emphasise the fact that they've now got 2 floors to play with, as providing floor space, which is much more useful than the single floor previously. Here's a sort of a CGI. It's going to be finished in pale buff brick, and it's got sort of, you can see there, sort of vaguely coloured panels to provide a bit of architectural interest. It's a relatively simple and muted design, but I think that works quite well in the area. You know, it's a modest-sized building. It doesn't need to make a statement. so it works quite well. And in terms of its scale, you can see here that it's lower than the surrounding tree line. So whilst it's an increase in built form, it still works pretty well contextually. And it goes without saying, obviously, there's a school for children with special educational need. There's overriding weight to support the proposal, even where some harm has been identified. On this basis, it's been recommended for approval, subject to conditions. Oh, I should also note that there's an addendum on this application to amend condition 12, which relates to the parking design and management plan. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I mean, another fantastic application. Well done, officers. Who's going to take it away? Councillor Gordon?
Thank you. I've got 3 questions. I'll read them all out at the same time, if that's okay. The words biodiversity net gain are used in the context of the application. It's a term that gets banded around all over the place. I'm not sure to what extent it's possible to gauge in a tangible and a meaningful way what that actually means in this context. We know we're losing trees. We know they're being replaced on a one-for-one basis. Not sure whether that's mature trees, so semi-mature trees, and where's the additional biodiversity gain coming from? So I wouldn't mind just understanding that a little bit better, if that's okay. That's the first one. There's reference to the Park Pale Scheduled Ancient Monument, and there's reference in the report to Historic England having some concerns over the fence that's there. Could we just look at that and just understand why it is that we don't think that is something that's a sustainable objection, and the fence that's proposed actually works? Would I think it'd be helpful just to see that again, if that's possible. And the final bit for me is section 7.08 from the report. There's reference to impact on neighbours and the fact that there would ordinarily be a 21-metre distance between units that are facing each other. I'm not clear whether that's the case in this instance, because it says it normally would be, so I'm not sure exactly what we're saying. I wasn't quite sure where that piece takes us in terms of what's actually being put forward. So a bit of clarity around that, please. Thank you very much.
Okay. Who's going to take away with the biodiversity first? Andrew?
Yeah, if I can go. So, I mean, you're basically correct in that the biodiversity net gain calculator is essentially in its draft form at its current state, and it's sort of being tested through the planning system as it stands. The London Plan normally tries to ensure biodiversity net gain through something called the urban greening factor, but that's not applicable to schools, so we had to use something else. We do have our own policy which refers to biodiversity net gain. I agree that on the face of it, you'd look at this site and go, how is it achieving a net gain on site with such a vast removal of trees? But they're essentially going to be replaced on a one-to-one basis, which, whilst not ideal and it would take time, would help to mitigate the impacts of that. They have submitted a biodiversity report. I can't remember it in great detail right now, but there are various approaches to improving biodiversity set out in that document. Maybe not a quite satisfactory answer, but I'll move on to the next question because I know the answer is better to those two. In terms of the scheduled ancient monument, so the fence in question, and I'll just sort of skip back through the slides. Okay, that one would have done. So here on the block plan, if you see that sort of that line that arcs across the top of the site and enters the site on the far right, that's the scheduled ancient monument marked up on this plan. So where the concern relates is basically along the red line, the applicants want to put a replacement fence. And on part of that, even though it's not particularly mapped very well on this plan, it does overlap right in the top corner and also on the right here. So we have got a specific condition which says they have to use the same fence poles, so there's no disturbance to the underground remains. That seems to be in line with the comments we received from Historic England, so we recommend approval on that basis. The separation distances, I mean, it's significantly further than 21 metres, as you can see on this block plan, to the nearest residential property, but that doesn't actually apply to schools. It's normally between habitable windows of other residential properties. It's more in there just to say that it's quite far away from every other residential property and won't have an impact.
Yeah. Amanda, do you want to?
It's 88 metres away, so normally we have that separation distance in the report, so I apologise that it wasn't. We normally set out where you are, but yes, it's 88 metres away from the closest residential property.
Councillor Corson,
Can I just thank officers for those replies? Biodiversity net gain, I rather suspected an answer like that would be forthcoming, but it is what it is. Nothing further on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chairman. My question was on trees. So we're replacing, where are we? One-for-one basis. Can we add in that they are mature trees? Because that's quite a densely wooded area.
Sorry, Councillor Davis, I don't mean to smile. It's just that I've had this conversation with officers, and Ian's going to answer this one for you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. It is a normal question that we get asked about, well, if you're taking out a mature tree, can you put in another one? The problem with mature tree, planting new mature trees, is that they are more susceptible to early failure, if I can put it like that. So the best way that trees are planted in the planting season, normally around winter, around about now, and planted as whips, and you normally plant more to allow for failures. So we wouldn't normally plant mature trees due to the fact that they are likely to fail or require more maintenance, more effort to keep them alive.
Councillor Davis, go ahead.
Can we protect the whips when we put them in? Because I would be concerned with it being a school. I know we was all children once. A stick in the ground can become a great piece of fun.
Well, the landscape plan is required to be held in perpetuity, so the development has to be built and maintained in accordance with that landscape plan. So we would expect any trees that fail, certainly in the early stages, to be replaced until such time as they are established and don't require the same sort of level of maintenance.
Councillor Davis,
I do have a second question.
Can I just, before you take your second question, I'd just like to say, if we are planting whips, why don't we plant? It would be more than one-to-one, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I think the wording might be.
Okay, so if we can say more than one-to-one would be better, wouldn't it? Something tighter. Anyway, Councillor Davis.
My second question, the construction management plan again. I can't see anything about wheel washing. And I would also like to put in there, if we can, access times. Because I don't see any sort of access times. With it being a school rush or a school, I'd hate for 7 minibuses to arrive plus an Arctic with our new SAPs on, or whips, whatever we'd like to call them.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Andy, do you want to take this, or you amend it? Okay.
Condition 3 will be updated.
You say.
Apologies. Condition 3 will be updated to include wheel washing. It would also control the hours of operation, so hopefully there wouldn't be a clash, and we would liaise with the school in terms of the hours that would suit them as well. We wouldn't normally consult the schools, and perhaps we amend the condition to say in consultation with potentially the head teacher. I'd hope that the site staff were talking to the head teachers, but you never know.
Councillor Davis.
Yeah, my only fear with that is the minibuses. We've got 7 minibuses on site, but providing all that is, I'm happy to move on this.
Okay, thank you. So we don't have a strategy for. I thought on the other school we did have a strategy for buses to be at a certain time, so there was a flow to them. We're not doing that on this one.
You're completely right. We can, during the full operation of the school.
Yeah.
Yes, I think you're completely right, and we should have that condition so that it's staggered, perhaps by year groups. Now, usually that's managed. Everyone arrives by minibus, so the minibus are routed appropriately. So yes, we can add that management plan.
So I'm proposed. Councillor Dott.
Thank you, Chairman. A good proposal which provide a suitable environment for the children with learning difficulties. No major concern been raised during consultation period. Resident services in the favour. Most importantly, they complied with the planning policy. I'm happy to second. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm proposed and seconded. We have a few little alterations. If I'll say them and then you can tell me if I'm wrong. I think we want more trees to make sure that these whippets are more than 70 trees. And then we have the management plan on the minibuses once the school is in operation, and the wheel washers again. We forgot that again.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay, so with that's proposed and seconded, with those informatives, can I have a show of hands of those in favour of this application? That's unanimous, Steve. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're on to item 9, which is... Oh, another round of applause. Thank you. Thank you. Now you're all going when no one's going to clap for us, aren't they? So I don't know what to do. Which is what it should. It was one that should be clapped as well. I totally agree with that. Anyway, so we're going to go to Unit 9, and this is Ed, Unit 6 and 7, also Industrial Estate, Alternate Road. Oh, so this is Andrew. I'll just... There's my team working at its best here. After you, Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a relatively quick application, I think. So the proposal relates to Units 6 and 7, which are within a wider industrial estate called Orbital Industrial Estate. And it's to allow these 2 units, which are currently in EG3 use class, which is light industry, to be allowed to be continued to use as light industry, alongside class EG2, which is research and development, B2, which is heavy industry, and B8, which is storage and distribution. And at present, they've got a lawful EG3 use, although their planning history indicates that they might have also sort of strayed into B2 and B8 on previous occasions. Here you can see the location plan. As I say, it's just these sort of 2 units accessed within the middle of the site. You've got Horton Road to the north, and you've got an access road down the middle of the site. In terms of the constraints plan, what you've got marked in yellow there is essentially the strategic industrial location, which is a site that's appropriate in the main reservoir of all of London's industrial land. As you can see here, both units, well, you can't see here, but both units have parking associated with the communal parking area around the site. You've got 5 associated with Unit 6 and 15 with Unit 7, from memory. There's no change to the ground floor plan. As I say, it's an existing unit. They just want to have a bit more flexibility in how it can be used. Here we can see the sign in its context. Again, it's mostly an industrial context. And lastly, we've got the photos of the site. As you can see, it looks fairly typical of a sort of low-rise industrial estate. It's recommended for approval on the basis that all the proposed uses are as acceptable as the existing use within the strategic industrial location. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Andrew. I was just checking before Councillor Davis came in with that wheel washers, but there's no work here, so it's easy. So, who would like to... Yeah, sorry, Mandit would like to say a few words before I open it to the floor. Sorry.
I have to apologise that there is a verbal update that the site location plan has been amended, so it should read within the plan pack. The site location plan dated 13th of January 2023. Your pack is accurate. It's an update to be done for the decision notice. Thank you.
To take me away here. Someone's got to. Come on. Councillor Cawthorne. God, there's an awful silence there. This is not really a complicated application. Councillor Davis.
Only to move officer recommendations, to be honest.
Thank you very much. Councillor Davis.
I'm happy to second the officer's recommendation.
Okay. There you go. So, we're there. So, we've been proposed and seconded. Those show of hands, those in favour with the officer's recommendation. It's agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. Then we go to... This is sure. We go to item 10, which is the West Drayton Leisure Centre. This is Ed.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a relatively straightforward application. It's a minor material amendment to the full planning consent for the demolition of the existing buildings and construction of a new leisure centre on the Useley and West Drayton Leisure Centre site. The application seeks to replace the approved arboricultural assessment document within condition 3 due to a requirement to remove 4 additional trees in order to facilitate the construction of the development. So if I can just show you the plans, this is the location plan, constraints plan, and this is the critical plan that shows the landscaping, and if we can zoom in, these are the trees marked that are proposed to be removed, and then we have some site photos including some of the trees. So the applicant has submitted a revised landscaping plan which indicates that the 4 trees to be removed are replaced in similar locations, thus there will be no net loss of trees. The Council's tree officer has raised no objection to the removal of the trees which are not subject to tree preservation orders and is satisfied with the location and the species of the replacement trees. In addition, as per the addendum, a change of condition 7 is proposed that will require the applicant to submit details for the planting of 4 additional trees within the vicinity of the site and within 12 months of consent. The application is recommended for approval. There is one other addendum item, which is that condition 36 is to be amended to be uninformative. Thank you, Chair.
See, that's Councillor, that's how I know about the trees. That one there. So, it's quite straightforward. So we'll have additional trees that might be on another site as well. So we remove those, replace 4 on site, and then with these whippets, they're a lot cheaper, so we can get more trees for our buck. Okay, so who wants? Councillor Dott, see, even the opposite, and Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chairman. Minor material change amendments application. Unless my colleagues they have anything to say, I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Okay. Councillor Davis.
I'm happy to second officer's recommendations. Thank you,
So
Chairman.
that is proposed and seconded. Can I have a show of hands those in favour of officer's recommendation with those additional trees on another site? Thank you very much. That's agreed. Okay, and and the last one of the evening is number 11, Unit 3, Clayfield Way, and that is Andrew, or Andy.
Either one. Thank you, Chair. Yes, as you correctly say, item 10 relates to Unit 3, Clayfield Way. The proposal is for an attached tiered gantry to an existing data centre to provide a mechanical plant and 4 generators. As you can see here, slightly strange site location plan, but that's because the extension is at the bottom of that building that's shown there, and it's accessed sort of by the L shape there. It's not within a strategic industrial location, but a strategic industrial location is, the boundary is just to the left of the site. Technically, Greenbelt covers the site as well, and then you've got preferred employment location to the right, but essentially it's in an employment generating area. Yep, here you can see that the Greenbelt covers the site, and the bits marked yellow are essentially the employment uses. There's also, you see there, the red indicates the historic park, Stockley Park, which is Grade 2 listed. As you can see here, the existing site conditions are essentially these 4 big warehouse units, and the extension relates to the southern side of Unit 3. The nearest residential properties have been highlighted in this plan, and you've got sort of a travelling show people site just to the north, Horton Road residents to the left, and then you've got some residents on the southern side of the railway canal, with just a canal. Here you can see the existing site plan. The red line, as I say, sort of snakes in between the 2 buildings because that's where the extension will go. The proposed site plan, I'm sorry, you can just about make it out, but it's basically squeezed in there. Again, here you can see the extension as it is. You can see the ground floor layout, first floor layout, and the second floor layout. I mean, it's a tiered gantry, so there's no access or anything. It's just mechanical plant, essentially. Here you can see the proposed section, so it's not taller than the existing building. It's a fairly functional-looking structure, let's say, but it's not inappropriate for the site. Here you can see the elevations again, so it's slightly smaller than the existing building, which means it's subordinate in our view. And there's the bird's eye view. It's worth noting that the siting of the extension will replace 40 car parking spaces, which will reduce it down to 100. But BA uses, and specifically data centre uses, have very low levels of on-site employment, and so parking isn't very needed to a very high degree. And this is a photo of the site. I mean, it's recommended for approval. It's considered an appropriate development, an appropriate location, subject to the conditions and obligations within the report. It's also worth noting there's an addendum on this item. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Andrew. Yes, so Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't think we actually need a massive discussion on this personally. It's the same building, so I'm happy to propose the officer's recommendation.
We just have to note the addendum as well, but I'll take your proposal. Councillor, if you just wait till mandate was just...
The addendum is a brief plan correction. We are also adding an informative to see whether the scheduled maintenance of backup generators could be considered for redistribution back into the grid. Now, we don't know whether that's feasible, but it's an informative that's cropped up on this as well as Hillingdon Hospital. That's all.
Thank you. Councillor Gibb.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I completely agree with the officer's recommendation, and I'm happy to second it.
Okay, so that's proposed and seconded with the recommendations to the addendum as well. Are we agreed? Please show your hands. Full house. We're all gone. Well done. Thank you very much. And we've even finished before 8:30. How about that? Now, I did not foresee that. So I'd like to thank you all and officers, and such a big team today. It was really nice to see you all, and have a pleasant evening and safe drive home. Thank you very much. Thank you. We're off.